What's going on, guys? We are back for another episode of the $1 Million Case Study, Season 4, Episode number 5, where we are launching and scaling a physical products business to $1 million in revenue, and we're donating all the profits to Pencils of Promise throughout the case study. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to find suppliers and everything you need to know to contact and communicate with them effectively. We brought on a special guest, Sharon from Alibaba.com, to help us with this process. Sharon, welcome.
Thank you so much, guys.
Welcome, Sharon. We're happy to have you. Do you want to just start off by telling the audience a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Sharon Li, and I am working for Alibaba.com with the marketing team in the US to essentially promote our platform to the buyer and also educate buyer how to make use of our platform and find supplier. And also we offer a lot of great tools to help buyer in global sourcing.
Now, is there some benefit that from outsourcing from outside of the USA? Is there some benefit to going with something like Alibaba.com?
So there are different advantage of doing global sourcing. One of the big thing is, well, definitely cost effectiveness, because if you source from a country where the manpower is the labor cost is lower, then you pay less on your manufacturing cost, right? So that's number one. And then second one is the variety of product that you can find from overseas supplier. The range is much higher.
So Sharon, are all of the suppliers on Alibaba.com from China, or are they also elsewhere in the world?
Yeah, so they're actually from all around the world. Majority of them are based in China.
Now, does every country specialize in certain industries, or is there any benefit to working with one country over another?
Certain country, they might have a better technology or better material source for a certain product. So, for example, I would say Turkey is great to manufacture the textile product, towel, for example. But I think China is really great for many category. It's a like long history of manufacturing hub in China. So you can find material and technology that is not available elsewhere in the world.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So Sharon, what I like to do is we're looking for keyboard trays. So I'd like to make a search on Alibaba.com for keyboard trays. And then I personally have a few questions for you that I'm really curious about, okay? So I see there's lots of different manufacturers for keyboard tray. That's one of the things I love most about Alibaba is just like the huge selection. So I see this particular company, Ningbo Yinzu, I'm sure I butchered that saying. Ningbo. Sorry.
Very close.
So first of all, I see that they're a gold supplier. Could you tell us a little bit more about what it takes to become a gold supplier, or who can get that?
Yeah, good question. So in the past, we have gold supplier listed on our platform. So essentially they're paying membership by the suppliers. What we do is we conduct on-site check with gold supplier, meaning that like we, Alibaba.com, we make sure that they exist.
So it minimizes the chance of fraud because you guys have verified this as a legitimate business.
Exactly, correct. So we always encourage buyer to work with gold supplier. And then recently, we just launched a program called Gold Plus Supplier. They are gold supplier, but they it's a premium pay membership. And we offer added value service to the supplier. For example, we offer the panoramic pictures to showcase their factory and their office.
Okay.
And then also we also bring in a video crew to take video of the factory, for example. And we also do. We verify the production line, and also we offer the factory inspection report for the supplier.
So then the benefits of someone like us, we're right now looking for a supplier for our keyboard tray. The reason we might want to choose a gold plus over a gold supplier, it sounds like it's mostly just because there's a little bit more transparency into the organization because I can see it through videos and additional photos. Is that correct?
A little bit more, I would say, like also the Gold Plus supplier, they tend to have higher transaction amount.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about trade assurance.
So essentially it's an order protection program
where
a buyer place order on a platform and make payment through Alibaba.com if the supplier don't ship the product on time or the product quality is different than what's been agreed with the supplier. buyer can come to Alibaba.com and file a dispute. And we will look at the situation because we have the online agreement for a trade assurance. Then we can decide whose fault is it, right? So if it's a supplier's fault, then we'll be able to refund the money to the buyer. So very great tool for buyer to use.
Okay. So it's essentially like an escrow system. So me as a buyer, if I chose to go with this Ningbo keyboard trade company, then I could pay money into this Alibaba escrow account, and you guys would pay them. And that way you have verification of the transaction. And if something were to go wrong, you guys would refund the money. Is that correct?
So actually, it's not an escrow.
Okay.
So it's, I would say quite similar, but essentially, we work with a local bank in different countries, and then the buyer pay the money to the local bank account that is associated with the supplier.
Okay.
Yeah. So that the money is not released until the product is shipped to the buyer.
Okay, good to know. And is there any cost associated with that for the consumer, like our end, the people buying the products?
No, absolutely. So trade assurance is absolutely free.
Okay.
The buyer, we don't charge the buyer at all.
Gotcha. And then what payment options do you have with trade assurance?
So in the US, good news is we offer a lot of great payment options. So major credit card, for example, like Visa and,
Nice.
And MasterCard, for example, and then TT, and also
Which is a wire transfer.
wire transfer, bank wire transfer, and then also ACH.
Great.
Yeah, and one more thing is we just launched this new financing option called Pay Later.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of like a loan.
Yeah.
Offer to.
Do you know what the rates are associated with that?
Yeah, sure. So Paylay we launched recently on Alibaba.com. So it's a strategic partnership we have with a local loaner called Cabbage, and they offer business loan to small business owners. And from what I know, that the interest rate right now starting from 1.25% monthly, and then you can borrow up to $150,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it looks like on the website, some other requirements. You have to be in the U.S., you have to be in business for at least a year, and $50,000 annual revenue. So probably if you've been in business for a year, that's probably a pretty easy to match. So cool. Sharon, I'd like to ask you some details about the other things. Like, for example, I see here that this particular company has 16 transactions for over $250,000. Are those all through Alipay, or is that all of their revenue? Could you give us a little more insight there?
Yeah, sure. So those are information that we recorded on Alibaba.com. So when you see what is it? It's like 18 transactions, meaning this supplier has been making 18 transactions on Alibaba.com through trade assurance.
Okay.
Yes. But doesn't mean that they only make 18 transactions ever for the business. It could be more than that. But on our platform, we know that 18 transaction.
So that's just like another way to gauge the credibility of a factory.
Yeah.
You know, we kind of have proof now there's been at least that many transactions through the Alibaba insurance program. So like just one more factor. Okay.
Every gold supplier have their own mini profile.
Okay.
Site, that's what we call it. And then from there you can see.
Is this it? Like right here? Is this
yeah,
one of the many
exactly.
sites? Okay.
Right here, for example, their transaction history and their response rate. Also very important. So you want to talk to somebody who have higher response rate because they're more communicative. And then also you can see the country they have experience exporting to.
What are some other good pieces of information we should pull, like when we're looking for and trying to vet good factories? What are some other tools that Alibaba gives us for finding good factories?
You can look at the supplier type, what type of supplier they are. Are they manufacturer or are they trading company? Or they are wholesaler, for example. And then if you see verify check, meaning that Alibaba.com verify this piece of information. Like
this particular example, Alibaba has verified that they're both a manufacturer as well as a trading company.
Yeah, so if they say that, most likely they're a trading company. Okay. Maybe they have special relationship with the manufacturer. They'll be able to work very closely with the manufacturer. For example, like they're actually family, or the cousins of each other.
Okay.
Yeah, I know this is very common in China.
So if you want it to be solely a manufacturer, then it would just display manufacturer.
Yes.
Without the trading company.
But
yes.
And if it says manufacturer and trading company, then they're usually more likely a trading company, less so a manufacturer.
Yes.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between a trading company versus a manufacturer. Could you start off just by telling the audience the difference between those two?
Yeah, absolutely. This is probably one of the top 3 questions I get asked all the time, by the way. So manufacturer is like the one who are actually producing the product.
Okay.
Right? They have a factory, they have machine, they have workers, their laborers producing the product. And oftentimes, they will only be able to produce like 1 or 2 product, not like 10 or 100, right? Because they only have certain capability. And then also they would have a higher MOQ, minimum order quantity, with the manufacturers. So when you work with a manufacturer, you will be expected to purchase higher volume. For trading company, essentially, most people call them the middleman, right? So they buy the product off the manufacturers and sell to their customer, buyer, for example. But usually they will mark up the price. But the advantage is that they can carry different kind of product, like a wider product range. So you'll be able to also get product sample and sourcing different kind of product through the trading company. And also they could offer lower MOQ. Yeah, so it will be another good factor working with trading company.
And one thing I do when I'm on the mini site, I can go in. I can actually see by going under the product category all the see all the different products that they carry. So if it is a trading company, more than likely it is spread out. But if it's a manufacturer, it's going to be, like you said, 1 or 2 products that they probably
one
produce.
or 2 products, or within the same product category. For example, like if a supplier who's producing like say a baby clothes. Right. Yeah. So they most likely carry like baby head or baby bead or baby onesies, for example, as a manufacturer. But if you see a trading company, they can carry like, baby clothes and electronic devices.
Sure.
Very different type of category.
Very different.
Yeah, the way I like to think about it is imagine like what type of machinery it would take to manufacture that product. And like manufacturers, they would all have the same type. So like your baby clothes example, that would be devices to like dye fabric and sew fabric and cut fabric. Right. Whereas if you're making electronics, it's a very different subset of like machinery required, right?
Yeah, then most likely they are like trading company.
So Sharon, what are some other tips that you could teach us on Alibaba.com?
Yeah, sure. Well, I have a lot of tips, but I kind of want to focus on 3 things today. So how to search items on Alibaba.com, and then how to do communication with supplier on Alibaba.com, and how to make transaction on Alibaba.com. But let's talk about search. So first one is a famous search bar on the homepage. Right. Here, I would say that like you want to be a little more specific with your product keyword, but not too specific. Otherwise, you probably limit your search results.
So ours looks pretty good, but I guess we want to do more specific.
Maybe the material.
Or ours is like a clamp on, so we can try clamp on keyboard tray. Like this one, it looks like for us, like keyboard tray would have just like did better. But that's actually a good tip that like, you could try either more specific or less specific depending on if you got the results that what you were kind of hoping for. Yeah,
so that's number 1 by having a product keyword in place. Then you can use RFQ,
how do you do
that? So you go to one quest multiple quote right here in the corner, and then try RFQ now. Essentially, it's just one simple form. You fill out the product name and then the category, and also how many units you're looking to source.
Okay.
And then you want to be a little bit more specific about the product specification. What is it? Material, color, for example. And you can also attach your image file here. You hit submit. So instead of you as a buyer going for like 15 or 20 different suppliers asking the same question one by one, and send them the image file one by one, fill one form, send it out, and supplier would get quotation for it. Usually within 24 to 48 hours, you'll be receiving from 5 to 10 different quotations. That's really efficient. And also one thing on RFQ, you can do an expedite your request as well, where we will make sure the supplier respond to you quicker than usual.
Right, so $10.
Yeah. And then basically we will up your inquiry to the top on the listing. So one supplier will see high exposure to the supplier. Yeah.
Even better.
Cool. And then what's the third way for us to search for products?
This is my personal favorite, where You can capture any product image. And then using our visual recognition tool, you can see the similar product that you can find on Alibaba.com right away. It's just in 1 second.
Cool.
We can do a little demo right here. So on PC, you have to download a plugin called Source Now.
All right. We already have that Chrome extension installed.
Perfect.
How about Source Now?
It's a Chrome extension, and then you can go to any website and then capture that image.
So we're just on Amazon right now. We're just going to grab one of the keyboard trays, click capture, and then it does this image search on Alibaba.
Yeah.
And it seems like some products work better than others. Like for example, that's pretty much the exact same keyboard tray.
So essentially we look at the shape and color of the image, and we're able to match the product that we have on Alibaba.com and show it to you. So this tool is available on PC, also on a mobile app, Alibaba mobile app. When you go to the search bar on a mobile app, you click on the little camera icon.
Yeah.
And then you can take a photo or upload a picture of the product, and we'll do the same trick.
So let's transition into talking about communicating with suppliers and doing so through the Alibaba platform. What are some tips you have for us?
I do have a lot of tips. And communication is huge when you're working with an overseas supplier that you never met, that you don't know, right? When you search for a supplier on a platform, and most people look at the pricing, right, listed on a platform, but don't take that pricing as like, okay, this is the absolute final pricing. No, I mean,
I'm glad you said that, because that's just like a ballpark, right? Like they need to know how many you're ordering, your requirements, all those types of things. The prices they give on here is kind of just a starting point, not much else.
Yeah, exactly. And usually they give you like, okay, from $50 to $100.
Yeah, it's a pretty big range.
And really depending on like the complexity of the production, and then the how many units you're ordering. So that just give you a guideline to start with. And you want to ask questions to the supplier. You want to communicate with them one step of the way, so the supplier can give you a more accurate pricing at the end. So that's number one. And don't be afraid to ask questions to the supplier. So when you search for a product on a platform, and then when you see the supplier listing, there's always a button called Chat with Supplier.
Contact Supplier.
Contact Supplier, yes. And I always try to think from the supplier perspective that you want to give them as much as information as you can, and you want to sound professional. You want them to think that you are a serious buyer, not just somebody who is asking random questions. Also, be more knowledgeable in the product category that you're working on. Ask the right question. And if you have some more knowledge about the technology of the product that you're searching, that will be really helpful to the supplier. And also that usually get them very excited too. That, oh, wow, I'm talking to somebody who knows the industry, who knows the product category. Oftentimes, when you send out a message to the supplier, automatically you're sending out your business card on Alibaba.com, so they can see your email address. So some supplier might reach out to you through other method outside of our platform. I mean, it's okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong, but I would always encourage buyer to keep all your conversation on Alibaba.com. One is more organized, right? And you can keep all the sourcing related conversation on our platform.
It's not shady or against Alibaba's terms of service to move over to like WeChat or Skype or email, but you don't recommend it because A, it's less organized, and B, there's no then like proof in the Alibaba system if something were to go wrong. Like down the line, you're going to use trade assurance. You would look back at the messaging if there was ever a dispute.
I was thinking one of the elements that we'll look at, but most importantly, for example, with trade assurance, right? When you go through that process, you have to fill out an kind of online agreement, and you have to outline the product specification and all the details. So we look at that. Mainly.
That's more important than messaging.
Yeah, but I would always keep messaging on Alibaba.com, and also you can sync up everything on mobile app as well. So you can always connect with a supplier on the go with your mobile app. And also when you work with a supplier, especially from China, always negotiate. Always ask for a better price. They want to work with a buyer who have potential business that grows, because they also want to grow with the client. with
Sure.
the customer. So it's not like, okay, you're just starting out, you're a very small guy, like you're placing small order, then supplier don't want to work with you. So something to keep in mind as a buyer. Yeah.
Good tip. So Sharon, I understand that Alibaba is a global platform and there's factories from all around the world. But since you have personal experience living in China, I would like to ask you some questions about working with Chinese factories or maybe cultural differences or any other insights you could give to us.
Yeah, absolutely. You're asking the right person. I personally live in China for about 9 years. Even though I'm Chinese myself, I'm from Hong Kong. But for somebody who is have never been to China, the American,
it can be a scary thing for some people like that live their whole lives in America. Like, what's it like in China? It's kind of like maybe seems like a far off place, and they're intimidated by it a little.
Yeah. I would say sort of like you don't have to.
Okay.
Like people, for example, in China, I would say most of the suppliers who are listed on Alibaba.com, they have experience doing export business, like export meaning export out from China to major countries like the US and UK, for example. You guys can tell me whether it's true because you have.
I agree. Actually, a question we get often is like, do I need a translator if I'm going to work with these factories in China? And I've never had one. Like, I found that like the salespeople can almost always speak pretty good English, and that's kind of like one of my prerequisites to work with them.
Yeah, and I would say like English is international language and you speak the language. But recently we launched a really great tool called on our mobile app. It's a real-time translation feature.
Cool.
Where you type the message in your native language, let's say Russian, and then we translate that right away to Chinese or English.
Cool.
Yeah, so supplier understand. And then another tip is when you're working with a supplier to source a particular product category with some very technical terms that you want to convey and articulate to the supplier in English, but then sometimes maybe the supplier don't really get it in English. That's okay. You can use a real-time translation tool, translate that into Chinese with that technical term, so that the supplier will understand easier.
Okay.
That really help that communication process too.
I think what's very important is establishing the relationship.
Yeah.
You don't want to insult the supplier by giving them a very lowball price. You want to certainly negotiate a price. It's all about building a relationship. Wouldn't you agree on Alibaba.com?
I think so.
It's all about building that relationship.
Yeah.
And Sharon, that's actually a good question for you. Since you've personally lived in China for a while and lived in America for a while, are there any other business culture differences that you've noticed that would be good to share?
Yeah, I think one thing I've noticed is Americans tend to be pretty straightforward with the thing that they can do and cannot do, right? Let's say when I'm asking you, hey, Craig, can you do this for me? Like, well, you know what? With this time that I have, with this budget you have, probably I cannot do it.
Yeah.
Right away, off the bat. But with the Chinese vendor, they probably would not give you a hard no right off the bat. There's still room for them to find solution for you. So my suggestion is, just always checking in with the supplier and, and see whether or not they can do it or not. Even though they cannot do it, they might not tell you right away. It takes some time for them to really try things out and then tell you oh, sorry, I cannot do it.
And then your personal experience, have you noticed any differences from a relationship building standpoint?
Based on my experience working and talking with the Chinese supplier on our platform, a lot of them, they're welcoming new customer, even though you're starting out very small, right? You're just starting out selling on Amazon, placing really small order. They, most of them, very welcome to work with customer who is very small, because essentially they want to grow the business with you.
So would you say it's accurate that one of the things that motivates them from a business standpoint is like a long-lasting relationship that can build over time, as opposed to just like a one-time deal, like just trying to close this one deal?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen a lot of a customer, buyer in the US, they found a supplier from Alibaba.com. They've been working through Alibaba.com and for 2-3 years, and now they kind of become a family. They actually know the supplier children, or they visit China before, and then they have dinner together, and they buy toys for their children, for example, right? They really establish that personal relationship, and it's so valuable for both sides. It's more meaningful than just everything transactional.
Yeah, I personally can vouch for that because I know that one of my suppliers during the holidays, they send me cards and gifts, and it's pretty pretty great when you can build that relationship out. Well, I'm really excited about using that real-time translation, but is there anything new that's coming down the pipeline?
Yes, actually in September, there are a lot of new things coming out from Alibaba.com. We are going to launch a new feature, video chat on the mobile app. Wow. Reason why is a lot of overseas buyers, they want to see the factory of the supply. Because
they walk around with their phone and show you the factory?
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be sweet.
You can kind of turn on the video chat and it can show you, hey, this is my factory. Hey, this is the product line. This is the machine. And this is the product. This is the material. Fantastic. So it's give you that more confidence to work with the supplier with more visuals elements.
And what's this Super September about?
Super September.
Yeah. You alluded to it. Now I know.
I know. So it's an annual promotional campaign on Alibaba.com. So this year, we are going to offer 50% off on the sea freight and also 50% off on the air shipment. And then also inspection fee, 50% off during September.
Cool.
There are a couple of other great offerings in September. So this year we're going to start on September 4th until September 30th. PST time.
Awesome. That's actually perfect timing for people following along with this particular case study. So
absolutely. Yeah, make use of Super September.
Sharon, thank you very much for coming on. We've really enjoyed it. It's great to peel back the curtains and get a little inside scoop what's going on in Alibaba.
And we see some real face behind Alibaba, not just a website, right?
Totally.
Yeah, I'm so happy being here. Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay, all right. So that was really helpful having Sharon here to help us navigate Alibaba.com and learn a little bit more about the platform with insider's knowledge. That being said, we now want to show you how I personally, or how Rolando uses Alibaba.com, how we go about making our searches, and how we go about choosing which factories we want to contact and which ones we don't. Take a look over my shoulder and let me show you. After going to Alibaba.com, I'm just going to type in keyboard tray. You can try the image search if you choose to do so, like Sharon taught us, but I tend to just do the keywords.
I was going to say also, here you wouldn't try clamp on keyboard tray, right?
What I typically do is I start with broader keywords like keyboard tray. And if there's too many results, or if the results don't seem similar enough to what I'm actually looking for, then I usually just change my keywords associated with it. So that's when I might try clamp on keyboard tray instead. And how I like to use the platform, maybe just because I'm old school and I prefer the older view, but I usually click on this in the top right-hand corner, which then gives you this view. And I prefer to only view suppliers instead of viewing products. When you're on the products tab, it shows all the different products. And oftentimes what you'll find is it will show two different products that are manufactured by the same supplier. And at the end of the day, I just want to contact each supplier once. That's why I prefer to click on the suppliers tab. Now, as Sharon told us a little bit earlier, a gold supplier, I think, is a requirement. If they're not a gold supplier, then they're probably very new and they're just not taking it very seriously. And they're much more likely to be a scammer or someone who's running an illegitimate business through Alibaba. I wouldn't say gold plus supplier is required. At the end of the day, I don't know if this provides that much more clarity or that much more of a verification process for the factories. It sounds like it gives them a little bit, but I've never personally made that a requirement. However, since there are quite a few suppliers here, I see there's 419, I'm going to go ahead and click on trade assurance because I actually do honestly like trade assurance, and I would prefer that they have that as an availability. So now I see I'm down to 292 suppliers. This is more manageable. And right now it's sorted by best match. And Sharon spoke with us a little bit, actually more off camera, that there's a number of things that go into their algorithm that makes the suppliers that are shown at the top probably the best suppliers for us. For example, if they have had poor experiences in the past that have been reported to Alibaba, or there's other reasons that they tend to think they're not as legitimate of a supplier, then they usually rank them worse on their search results. So the ones rated at the top, or at least on the first page or two, these are typically factories that have had a good long-standing relationship with Alibaba, which is a good sign for us. From here, what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna message a whole bunch of these suppliers. What I've found with using Alibaba over the years is that a number of those factories will not ever even actually respond to you. So I'd say out of all the factories that I message, I would say only 50, maybe 70% of them even respond to my first message, which is fine. They're just kind of helping weed themselves out of the process. So to start, I'm going for quantity over quality.
Exactly.
And once I start getting some responses from these suppliers, that's when I can start narrowing down to which individual ones I want to start working with, okay? So as far as messaging these suppliers for the first time, this is a template that we've used in the past. Rolando actually used this exact template when he was messaging all these different suppliers. To start off the first paragraph, Rolando's telling a little bit more about himself, who he is, a little bit more about his company, and how they sell the goods, and approximately how many units they'd be looking to purchase either for this order and into the future. And right away, the goal of this paragraph is to start building a relationship with this factory. Let them know that you're serious. You're going to take this seriously. We're excited about selling this particular product. So just so they can learn a little bit more about us. If we look at the next paragraph, these are the specifications that pertain directly to our product.
If you remember, we're actually trying to improve upon this particular product, the clamp-on keyboard tray. We're using a keyboard tray as a reference because we know they already manufacture this product, but now we're actually trying to give them specifications to our liking.
And these would be the changes that we're looking to make for our particular product, right? Mm-hmm. The picture we give them gives a similar product, but in the specification section, we're saying, hey, we want a little bit different size. We want it wood instead of plastic. We want the sliders to be metal instead of plastic. And we're also thinking about including a little wrist rest. That's a tongue twister.
Yeah, it is.
Wrist rest.
I'll let you say it because I'll mess it up.
We also want to include a wrist rest. And then we move on to asking them a number of questions. And you label them or number them. You know, right here we have 1 through 9. The reason that I really recommend this, and I've kind of tuned this over the years, is because factories that are very easy to work with and are very organized and can communicate well, they'll actually respond to each of these individual questions, right? Yep. So when they're responding to this, it's 9 questions. So right away, they're going to have to spend a little bit of time responding to this. And they'll do number 1, give you the response. Number 2, give you the response, et cetera, et cetera. So right away, if I get a response from a factory and they've answered all 9 of these questions in a neat format and their English is pretty good, they seem pretty good to communicate with.
And in a timely manner.
Then right away, I'm like, okay, this is someone that I'd be willing to work with or at least take on to the next phase of the vetting process.
Opposite to that, if they answer just 1 or 2 questions, you almost know that you probably don't want to work with that manufacturer.
Totally. So we'll show you some examples of some of the responses, but you'll be amazed that some of the responses are just like, we make keyboard trays and they're very nice. Here's our catalog. And it's like, you're not really putting your best foot forward to like start off this relationship. That's not the type of factory that I'm really excited to be working with.
Absolutely.
At this point, all I do is copy the template that we have, Control C. I'm just going to go in here and click on Contact Supplier and literally just paste our letter right in here. This is exactly what Rolando did when he was going through the process. The only other thing I would add is add any pictures that you have. You can use those poor man's drawings like we spoke about in previous episodes. This is a great place to put those in so they understand exactly what you're looking for. They're not going to be able to give you an accurate price until they truly know everything that they have to do, okay? So if you want a different type of packaging, modifications, all these types of things, what changes the price. And it always frustrates me if I have to ask for these later on because it seems like everything you ask for is like, oh, an extra 10 cents, an extra 20 cents. It's like, wait, I want a different color. Oh, extra 30 cents, whatever. So just have all your specifications up front so that you don't have to renegotiate on the price. And I will say, you know, if there are minimum order quantities like 1,000 or 2,000, you want less units than that, you can still ask for that. I think even Sharon said this a little bit earlier, but everything's for negotiation when you're working with these suppliers. None of these prices or MOQs or anything else is set. Their main goal, so we can understand the motivations of the suppliers, are to build long-lasting relationships that they'll be able to sell their product to for years and years to come. So Rolando has already messaged a whole bunch of these factories, and we want to show you guys in real life what some of these responses are like and what the difference is between a good response and a bad response. And next week, we're going to go more in depth with vetting the suppliers and how to choose which one is the supplier that we want to go with. However, since you're going to start getting responses between now and then, let's go ahead and give you a little bit of a sneak peek of what to really expect in real life. So this is an example. Rolando sent the same template that we just shared with you guys. He sent the pictures, and this was the response that we got back from this particular factory. It looks like my name was saved in there, but dear Mr. Greg, you can see this is very short, right? Nice to get back to you. Thanks for the information. For your new design, we'll show it to our engineer, get back to you. And then they never ended up getting back to you, right? This is it. So this is obviously a factory that we don't want to work with.
Yep.
Something I'd like to add with this real quick, I see that they have different pieces of contact information below here. Earlier, Sharon spoke about that they prefer or recommend that you keep everything within Alibaba's messaging platform. And I actually do agree with her that that is best practice. If you end up communicating a lot with the factory and then use Alibaba Trade Assurance, it is best to have all your previous communications stored in Alibaba. That being said, I would say that's not the normal. It seems to me like most factories that I work with would like to get off of the Alibaba messaging platform. Over the years, the user experience of their messaging platform has improved. It used to be kind of janky, to be honest, but I think that's kind of like carried on. So oftentimes your factory will ask if you rather communicate with email, which is actually not commonly used in China, and I wouldn't really recommend. The other options are going to be either Skype, WhatsApp, or WeChat. And WeChat is the most popular messaging platform in China. If you want the most timely responses from your factory, actually putting them on WeChat and downloading WeChat, it's just a messaging platform, is probably going to get you the most timely responses. Some factories probably will have the Alibaba app installed on their phone, and you'll be messaging with your salesperson late at night for him or her, or really early in the morning for him or her, which is perfectly fine. But I just want to make you guys aware of the different communication methods that you can have with your factory. I will say that I don't think I've ever gotten on a telephone call with any of my factories. I'm always just messaging them through one of the different messaging platforms.
I would agree. And definitely you bring up a good point. Factor in the time difference. I live in the Eastern Standard Time, so I know that I am exactly 12 hours behind. And so if I'm communicating to them in the early morning, I know I'm not going to hear back from them either until late at night in my time zone or first thing the following day. So it's not that they're not getting back to you right away. It's just they're probably their office hours, or you're contacting them outside of office hours.
I will add that most of what I think of like really good salespeople or the best account managers that I have actually do stay up pretty late at night. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes I'll find that I can talk to these people until like lunchtime in North America, which is getting to be pretty late at night for them. They may be laying in bed for all I know, communicating back and forth with me. But that is kind of what separates like a really good factory. I wouldn't say that that's the norm and to expect that, but just so you get a little bit of an idea of what you can expect or start to think about. This one, thank you for your reply. Specific information will be sent by other inquiry, hoping more communication.
Yeah, so I'm already starting to see that we probably won't be able to communicate effectively because there's even like a break in the language. Once again, they're ultimately weeding themselves out without much effort right here at this stage.
Do you remember if you got some other type of communication with this person?
Nope, never got any other communication from that person.
This particular one says, "Hi, Rolando. Thanks for the inquiry. My colleague Adam already sent you a mail," which I assume is email, but I'm afraid it's failed. Can you add his Skype? So this particular factory is looking to get out of Alibaba's messaging platform and onto Skype, which is fine. Like Sharon said earlier, Alibaba doesn't prefer that, but at the same time, it's not against their terms of service. And like I said, this is normal from what I believe. To add to that, I would prefer that they at least responded to my questions and then asked me to communicate via a different method. But this is something that, like, if I were to get this, I'd probably say, like, okay, I'd probably ping them on Skype and go from there, but they're not really off to a great start. In this particular example, they asked if we need the one sent in the pictures or a plastic keyboard tray. Maybe it wasn't clear enough in the initial inquiry. I think that it probably was. But again, if this was me, I would respond to this. But again, I would say they're not off to a very good start. They didn't answer the rest of our questions. They just asked this particular one, which it's fine if they need more information or kind of like supporting information, but not the best response we could have seen. This right here is an example of a good response. So this particular supplier, they answered all of our questions. They numbered on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is something that I would definitely classify as a good response. And this is the type of factory I would prefer to work with. I think sometimes I get the question of what happens if I reached out to 10 factories or 20 factories and no one gave me a really positive response like this. I would still be willing to work with some of the other factories, but I'm always a little bit more hesitant. If they respond like right away and ask another question before they respond to all my questions, that's okay. But what we're trying to do here is gauge a few things. One is their overall response times. Did they get back to me quickly? Did they thoroughly answer my questions? Two, how are their English skills? I don't necessarily say I'm not willing to work with their factory if their English skills aren't perfect, but I want them to have good enough English skills that I feel like I can effectively communicate with them and they understand all the questions that I'm asking them and there's no strong language barriers. If you don't find any solid factories using this method, or really even if you do and you just want more quotes, you can also do an RFQ. And the easiest way to submit these actually just through the messaging platform, just check this box down here. It says recommend matching suppliers if the supplier doesn't contact me on a messaging center within 24 hours. And this is an RFQ, which is a request for a quote. After submitting one of those, this is what it will look like when you get back quotations from different factories. So as you can see here, it puts it in a nice grid-like fashion so you can compare apples to apples when you're comparing these different factories. Now, this isn't to say that they're going to be the best to work with or the best response times or best English or anything else, but it starts to give you an idea of different factories that are out there. And these are people who are obviously looking for your business because they submitted a quotation for you. We spoke with Sharon a little bit earlier about the differences between a trading company and a manufacturer. One point that I wanted to add there is using the customer-driven innovation method like we are in this season of the $1 Million Case Study. I would really prefer to work with a manufacturer. When you're working with a trading company, it's a middleman who then has to ask for your request from the factory. They give them a response, they get back to us, et cetera, et cetera. It really slows things down. And with the additional costs of adding in the trading company, I would really prefer just to go factory direct and work directly with the factory. One of the things that we discussed in the initial outreach letter to the factories is about a sample. And I just want to discuss that sample a little bit more. First of all, this is a great way to let the factory know that you're serious. You're willing to pay money to purchase the initial sample. It's also a great way to have an initial transaction with the company. You're paying them money. You're giving them a certain amount of trust by doing that. They're sending you something. After they send you something, you can start to evaluate how it was to work with them in that transaction and start to evaluate the quality of the sample. Expect to pay some money for these samples. Very, very rarely have I ever been giving a sample for free. Maybe if you email them with a @walmart.com email address, you can get a free sample. Otherwise, expect to at least pay shipping for the sample, which will run you $50 or more. And also just expect to pay for the sample. It's not that much money in the big scheme of things when you're talking about a larger order of 500 or 1,000 units. So it's very common to pay $50, $80, $120 for one of these samples. And that's without them making you a custom mold or really customizing this product. If we're talking about a highly customized sample, like we might want before we order our keyboard tray, now all of a sudden you can start talking about paying hundreds of dollars, maybe even $1,000 or more if they're building you a custom mold for this sample.
When it comes to paying for the initial sample, there's really two ways of going about it. The first is going to be PayPal. It's a very common practice. However, manufacturers may shy away from it because it is going to be the most expensive on their end. And of course, they don't want to pay that fee. The alternative to it would be a wire transfer. And we don't shy away from wire transfers either, even though we may have to pay a fee up front.
Wire transfer isn't going to be the cheapest because you do have to pay that $25 or $35 or $45 charge or whatever your bank charges you. I do like doing that because then I want that to be the same bank account that I pay for when I pay for the larger sum. I think there is an option to pay for samples inside of Alibaba with trade assurance, but I've never personally done that. I just wanted to mention that Jungle Scout isn't affiliated with Alibaba.com in any way. Alibaba didn't pay to sponsor this show or anything else. We asked Sharon to come on this show because she was a helpful resource for us understanding some of the intricacies of the Alibaba.com platform. If you choose to do so, you can use other marketplaces like Global Sources, or I'm sure there's other ones out there. You can also find factories at trade shows or just on Google. However, in my experience, Alibaba.com has been the best resource for finding factories, and I would recommend you at least start there. There aren't any fees to use it, and it seems like there are the most factories on Alibaba.com, and that's the main reason really why it's the #1 stop for me to personally go to.
Honestly, guys, I think this was the hardest part for me. I mean, when I first reached out to a manufacturer, I was scared, completely scared. I've never ordered from a manufacturer in the United States, let alone from a manufacturer in China. So I thought that this was going to be the make or break point of my business, and it ultimately is the make or break point of your business. But one thing that I learned in this process is this is the part that you can completely and utterly screw up, because reaching out to a manufacturer isn't going to ruin anything. You can reach out to as many manufacturers as you want, free of charge. There's no cost to do it. So screw this up if you have to, but do it. This is the breaking point of your business.
That's a really good point. You can reach out to as many as you need to. If you totally screwed up with one, it doesn't matter. There's a whole bunch more on there. You can find a new product or a new product opportunity. But at the end of the day, you're not really going to screw this up, okay? I had the same feelings as Rolando when I got started with this. I think I had like imposter syndrome, and I felt like, who am I to be able to work with these big factories in China? I'm a one-man show. I don't even hardly have a real business, or I'm just getting started. And we often get the questions like, do I need an @businessaddress.com, or do I need to have a title of what some of these people would working at these bigger companies? And the answer to all that is no. These factories may take some of those things into account when they're deciding whether or not they want to work with you. But the fact of the matter is they work with tons and tons of entrepreneurs or people who don't have real businesses yet. And at the end of the day, they just want to make a sale and they want people to be purchasing their products. And these factories aren't dumb. They know there's a lot of Amazon sellers out there that order a lot of product and can be great customers for them, even though they are not coming from Walmart or Dick's Sporting Goods or whatever else.
That's a great summary, and at this stage, it's now time to take massive action. If you go to junglescout.com/MDCS4-5, you'll be able to find the template that we've been talking about this entire episode that we use to be able to start reaching out to manufacturers. Ideally, you want to be able to reach out to as many as possible, but I would also recommend that you reach out to factories for each of your top 5 products so you can have a long list for next week.
And next week, we're going to teach you guys a little bit more about how to properly vet these factories, how to start receiving and vetting samples, as well as how to start doing your budgeting to make sure there's a positive ROI on whatever product you end up wanting to sell on Amazon. Thank you guys very much for tuning in this episode. Rolando and I have really enjoyed this one. If you're enjoying the $1 Million Case Study, go ahead and give our YouTube channel a subscribe. Thumbs up if you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you guys next week. Adios.
Keep crushing it, Freedom Builders.